Hello, my name is Jones. You're watching the Connect Live Stories. Welcome. I'm a student at RMIT. I'm studying IT. I'm a Kenyan. I'm the fifth child out of five, so I'm the youngest. Yes. So interesting story. I've always wanted to study abroad since I was 6 years old. And the first country I wanted to go was the US because we had a family friend who's in the US. But yeah, years progressed. Went to went to high school, and my high school had a couple of options, either going to France and going to other different countries because the alumni had gone to amazing countries. But it reached the last year in high school, and yeah, you have to make decisions. Applied to a couple of unis in Kenya, but then went home and discussed with my mom about studying abroad. We had a couple of countries to select from. We had South Africa, we had China, and we had Australia. And my mom opted for Australia because we have a family friend. And I was feeling excited because coming from Kenya and going to a dream country, because it's always been a dream for me to go to abroad. And yeah, applied after high school and came to Australia. Having watched so many movies when I was a kid, and it gives you a perception of how countries other than your country are, especially the Western world. And then you come here and you actually see what the Western world is. And the first thing was a shock. The first thing I saw was a homeless person, and that was a bit scary. I never saw that on TV. So that was one. But the other thing that made me sort of feel appreciated and actually absorbed my shock was because I was living with a family friend who had come 10 years before me, and he walked me through, gave me his story for the 10 years, and that made me decide a couple of things. But it was amazing. I actually met my first friend the second day in Australia. So that was also good because he's Australian, and he showed me the do's and don'ts and walked me through the city and through the restaurants. So that was an amazing experience. I personally think if you are able to communicate well with other people and try to get their needs and know what they want and how they think, you're able to shift your way of doing things. Because if I did everything I did in my country, it would be a terrible mistake. But then understanding people's culture is, I think, one of the greatest things to do. And then use wisdom. Above all, use your wisdom to analyze situations. I would say it's the guys I look up to. I tend to select my friends. I'd like to see what you've done with your life and where you're heading, what's your vision in your life. And through that, I'll be able to make the judgment if I'd like to be friends with you. And through that, I've been able to luckily have people who have a good understanding of where they would like to go. And that gave me perspective of how to build character to last me through difficult times and to last me through challenging situations. The second question on where is a boy child going? I think through social media and through other arenas, especially the media, you see that the boy child is heading to a dead end. But one thing I believe is there is so much information, especially this age. There's so much information of how successful men build themselves. And I would say it's up to one to be hungry for the information, search for the information, and have the knowledge, and then try to analyze the knowledge. But something great advice, I'd probably advise for the boy child, is to seek mentorship from men who have the same moral value as you have. Coming to Australia was the first time for me to have a job. I came to Australia and asked, so how does somebody get money? Because I thought you just get money from your parents. But then I came here and I was told you need to have a job. And being told that in Kenya and coming to Australia and being told that are two different things. Because in Kenya, you don't have the job and you're like, oh, I really want a job. But then when you actually get a job, and especially it's your first time, so you get a low-end job, and then you go to the environment, you're like, wait, this is not what I wanted. And that kicks in, and then what some people tell you in the job market is quite scary, and so that kicks back, and then you go to the house and you live by yourself, so you don't have anyone to talk to, you don't have your siblings, you don't have your mom and dad, and that's a shock. And if you do that over and over, there's a moment of time you're like, so why am I here? I would say that's a big question. But luckily, I got guided by men. And what I used to do was listen to positive audios and read a certain select of books that challenged my way of thinking. And associate, especially when I had free time, I would go to my friend's place and stay with them just to soak in the social aspect of being a human being. And that made me calm down. But then it's the daily studying and daily listening to positive audios and affirmations about yourself that helped me through difficult times. I am quite an I ask so many questions. So one of the things I noted while asking question is that when you come to this country, to a foreign country, what you studied is probably not what other people studied. And this came in the context whereby you say, oh, I'm from Kenya, and somebody asks you, where is Kenya? And you say Africa, and then they say, oh, is Africa a country? And in your mind, you're like, I think that's basic stuff. But actually, majority of them probably did not get the privilege to study geography, or if they studied geography, they only studied their country because the country is quite large. And I thought that was being ignorant, but then I have Asian friends who asked me about their Asian countries, and I had no idea where they were. So I was like, oh, so probably it's not about them not appreciating my culture, but it never crossed them, and it was not something important to them for them to study. And after that, I started appreciating it. I was like, oh, I have this culture and they have this culture. Am I willing to learn how they do things? And if somebody is willing to learn, I would be appreciative to share my culture, because other thing, I don't want to throw pearls to swines. So if somebody is not appreciative of who I am and what my culture is, I'll probably not mention about it. Another thing about relationships, that's quite an interesting thing, because each and everyone grows up in different sets of families, and that does form your ideology. But then it is up to an individual to come to the conclusion of, am I willing to partner with what my parents did? Am I willing to partner with what the social area I lived in did? Am I willing to go with that? Because some people are told. So interesting story. So yesterday I was talking to a British old lady, and she told me of a policy I never knew, and it's called the White Australian Policy, which was, I think, in the 1901, and it ran through 1950. And this policy actually segregated non-white, or rather non-European individuals from coming to Australia. And I was shocked knowing that, because nobody has ever told me that. So, but later on it was removed, and as you can see, I'm non-white, I'm non-European, and I'm in this country. But then such things, so as you continue growing up, am I willing to partner with that as an adult, or am I willing to take all the information and reason out with my moral system to come to a conclusion of who I'm going to be in a relationship with? As I've said, so I do IT, and part of it is gathering information and trying to have a cohesive conclusion. So what I decided to do was study the couples who I admire and who I would see myself being in the future, and try to know what they did to get there. Talked to one of the couples, and he advised me of a couple of books to study before dating, because he said it was quite key for him through dating. So for me, is trying to get advice from couples that would love to be, and read the books recommended, and shadow various activities. And the other question, would I date somebody from another race? That's interesting. But the short answer is yes. I come from entrepreneur family. My dad passed away when I was 13, and my mom ended up having to start a business. And through that, it was quite successful, and I'm here today. And seeing what my mom did made me have come to the conclusion that businesses are the way to go. And coming to a country where the systems are set and it's easy for you to get your hands to resources in terms of money, I came with the mentality of a business owner. So that means I needed to understand the function of money. I needed to understand what assets are, what liabilities are. I needed to understand how to live in a lean way. And so, for example, the money I have, going through a couple of years, I think this is the third year, I'm able to be in a position whereby I can work for 10 hours from a particular job, and that is enough to pay my rent and bills for the whole month. And the extra money is used to buy assets, because I don't believe I need to have a lavish life now. That's through the mentors and friends I've had, told me to have a long-term thinking. So majority of the extra cash is not spent on having fun, but rather on assets for now. We can have fun later. What I do for fun merely merges with my moral values. I would like to be a dad in the future. So what I do for fun majorly would be go to families who have kids and spend time with the kids and try to learn as much and play with the kids as well. But if I'm by myself, occasionally I'd play probably games, because I study IT and one of the assignments is making games. So try to understand that. But I'd majorly spend time reading about businesses and money and wealthy people, the lives of other people. Spend time studying about my faith. I would spend so much time, studying all that stuff. So reading and watching a lot of YouTube videos on businesses and on faith. Financial advice. I'm not yet at that level, but then probably share a couple of principles that I use as with the long term, with the long term thinking. So I do believe as a young person, because I don't have any responsibilities. There's no one who's borrowing me money. I have no kids. I have no wife. So merely each and every cent that I get is spent on me. So one of the things was tracking my money. So I usually write every single penny I spent in a book, and shifted that into a spreadsheet on Excel, and to monitor my spending habits. So I did that freely for like 3 months. I noted where I had errors, and then later on fixed that. So I was spending too much money on eating out, which was not good. And so I ended up noting my spending behavior and say this is not a good place to be. And a good book I read after high school was Rich Dad Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki, and it was talking about the cash flow quadrant and liabilities and assets. And I tried to put everything that I spend on, if it's an asset or it's a liability, and what's the return on investment. And after that, I made my decisions, and I developed a system through which I'm going to spend less money and going to put more money on assets. And assets, when I'm talking about assets, there's so many classes of assets, and what I'm talking about are debt-free assets. I was fortunate enough to have friends who have been able to establish businesses, and also know a couple of people. So this is mainly in my country, because the dollar is powerful in my country compared to here. Because if it's buying assets here, it's a tiresome case. And the other thing is trust issues, especially when you're investing your money in the country. So do you know where your money is going? So these are people I studied with for 4 years. I know them, I've been with them, I know them in and out. And luckily they've been able to develop sound financial decisions, and it was worthwhile putting my money in their ventures, which have grown exponentially, because I was looking at one of my friends and trying to see his business evaluation, and I was like, the money he probably earns and makes is greater than what an average Australian would, and that's in a third world country. So that gave me the hope that Kenya and Africa as a whole is viable for business if trust is enabled as the core system. What I do to prepare myself for dating, one is study the opposite gender. I find them a mystery, so studying as much as possible. That's despite me coming from a family of, I have 4 sisters, so yeah, the girl child is quite an interesting phenomenon. So I'm studying as much as possible about them, because I believe with knowledge has its added advantages. But yeah, studying them as much as possible, but also not forgetting the human touch. But I also have a plan of developing my personal self, especially communications, because I've been talking to so many couples, and one of the things they say is a hindrance and it's a barrier is communication. So I'm trying to communicate and leverage my friends who are girls and try to see if my studying is worthwhile. Taking action with inadequate knowledge, not having, so that's one. The other thing is not having a long-term picture. And the other thing I would say probably stems in terms of character, which might take a time to develop, which is self-control, being easily peer pressured. Those is one of the main things I've seen. This comes from studying and also people's true story lives. So one is define what you want. Who are you as a person, and what do you want? What are your non-negotiable values? Because somebody once told me that they actually compromised one of their main values and thought that it would work out, but it never worked out. So what can you not negotiate in your life? Is it finances? Is it partying? What can you not negotiate? Defining those is key. The other thing I would say is self-image, because I'm not sure to what extent this is, but some of the girls I've talked to, especially, and also men, and especially young men, the self-image is not well defined, and it seems if I get into relationship with this other person, it will define me as so and so, and the other person is also not well defined, and it ends up breaking them instead of making them. So know your value and your self-image, and stand up for your character would be some of the things I would say you'd safeguard. It may not be 100%, but it'll give you a higher percentage to know those things before you get into a relationship. One of the major things will be malleability. Funny enough, because an older lady asked me this and asked me to define what malleability is. And I told them it's the ability to change and to adapt with different circumstances, because I come from a different background, you come from a different background. Are we able to liaise together to have a common goal for us to go into a good relation, being open-minded, having a good heart, loving how you relate to people. And the other major thing is, are you able to learn and relearn? So those are the things. So how your mindset is, I would, from now moving forward, probably stem up with mindset, and then I'll be going deeper to the things that I would like. A lot, especially coming from my sisters as well, because the father-daughter relationship is a bit greater compared to the father-son, I would say. But he was loving nonetheless. But the way he treated my mom and treated my sisters did give me an aspect of respect. Never laid a hand on my mom or my sisters in a negative way. Discipline, yes, but nothing wrong. Kept his promises, and he governed the family. He was a voice. He was a voice of the family, and yeah, I really respected that. Okay, I'll share my observation and my perspective as Jones. And my dad passed away when I was 13 years. So throughout high school, I didn't have a father figure. So my mom played the role of both mom and father. But I had amazing friends who were not necessarily older, but younger. And one of them enlightened me, especially in terms of my faith, and told me to stand up, to borrow heavily from what's written in the Bible and model that character. And I believe for men, if you're able to define your characters well, I think despite there not being a father, you will make it. Absolutely. I don't believe that. And here are my reasons. So what do you call financial stable, and what use is the financial stability in her life and in my life? I think those are one of the major questions you need to ask yourself, because if you tend to say, okay, you're financially, first of all, I would probably prefer somebody who's financially stable than somebody who's not. So that's one. Knowing especially coming to a Western culture and understanding how finances plays a big role. And funny enough, I asked divorced men what was one of the reasons, and majority would repeat finances was one of the reasons they ended up breaking up. So being a financial upright lady is quite complimentary, especially that's for me. And I would vouch for somebody who is financially stable more than somebody who's not. For the younger generations, in terms of finances, it's subjective, or in terms of friendship, sorry, would be subjective. And one rule of thumb that has been studied, this is through a guy called Brian Tracy. He gave a talk, and he was saying that the wealthy have been studied for a very, very long time. And one of the things that made the wealthy is the environment. So define who you'd like to be in the future. Look at your circle. Is anyone able to help you get there? If not, are they willing to learn and connect with your vision? If not, I think it's up to you to pull the trigger. It's your life at the end of the day. You have the ability to choose. It's up to you to choose between good life, or mediocre life. So I think with the resources we have, with the knowledge we have, I think it's okay to say that you have the capacity to choose what you want, and people are going to respect your decision regardless. But I think the onus is up to you. So choose what you want. In terms of finances, this is through studying so many people from both cultures and different ages. Because especially for men, I would say would like good cars and all that. First thing, you need to know that a car is not an asset unless it's for businesses, if it's for business purpose. So a car is more of a liability. It's up to you if you want to throw away your money, but I would say people don't care what you drive. People care what drives you. So it's up to you. Good clothes, I think, as long as you're not naked, it's it's okay. Majority of the people would appreciate a good sense of fashion. Don't try to impress people who don't care about your life that much. So I would say it's up to you. It's up to you to decide what you want, but avoid liabilities as much as possible. This is subjective. Is not the absolute truth. It's up to you to define your truth. Decide what you want in your life in terms of housing, especially in this country. I would say the cheaper the better. You don't have responsibilities, so hey, don't go for a 5,000 house that you pay for rent if you don't need to. So try as much as possible to do cheaper rent. If possible, buy the house, get the money. That's good. Yeah, just try to live a reasonable life in terms of finances. In terms of dating, I can't give much there, but yeah, just do what you want, but let it be reasonable within your moral values. And a general rule of thumb is probably study as much as possible, read books, associate with people you'd like to be like, live life to the fullest, define your own true north, and have as much fun as possible. You only have one life, and if the years are meant to go as fast as the COVID period, I would say for me, probably 100 would be too much. But if life is going that quick, I believe it's high time to take action and have as much fun as you can and define your own true north. Be happy and define your own success. Don't isolate yourself. If you have any problem, seek help, because yeah, people are here for a reason. Talk to people you trust, and yeah, I think a healthy conversation would be much better. This is respecting all profession would be much better than going to a therapist. So I would say let's form a culture of having and loving the friends we have. God placed people around us for a reason.